Ambassador Zexthera of the Centauri Collective had always found human customs peculiar, but nothing prepared her for the sight that greeted her as she entered the grand chambers of the Galactic Council. 2 human guards flanked the entrance to the diplomatic quarters, standing at perfect attention in their crisp blue uniforms. What struck her as utterly bizarre was their complete lack of visible weaponry. Every other species in the galaxy armed their diplomatic protectors. The Rigelian guards carried plasma rifles that could vaporize a small building. The crystalline Vorthak wielded sonic disruptors capable of shattering molecular bonds. Even the peaceful Andromedans equipped their guardians with neural dampeners. Yet here stood these humans, apparently defenseless, their hands clasped behind their backs with an almost serene confidence. "Curious," muttered Council Chairman Veltar, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he observed the human delegation. Either they are supremely arrogant or supremely foolish. The mystery deepened during the first week of negotiations. Trade disputes arose between the Kree mining consortium and the human colony worlds. Voices were raised, tentacles slammed against tables, and pheromone clouds of anger filled the chamber. Through it all, the human guards remained motionless, their expressions neutral, their hands still empty of any weapons. It was Ambassador Klisk of the Serpentine dynasty who first decided to test the humans' resolve. Known for his aggressive negotiation tactics, he deliberately provoked the human representative, Ambassador Chen, during a heated discussion about mining rights. "Your species is weak," Klisk hissed, his forked tongue darting out menacingly. "You send children to guard your diplomats while real warriors protect their own." The nearest human guard, a woman with steel-gray eyes and graying temples, shifted almost imperceptibly. Her colleague, a younger man with calloused hands, simply smiled slightly. Neither spoke, neither moved to intervene, and neither reached for weapons that weren't there. Ambassador Chen maintained her composure. "Sergeant Martinez and Corporal Johnson are quite capable, I assure you." The true revelation came 3 days later during what would later be known as the Proxima Incident. A rogue faction of hegemony militants had infiltrated the council station, armed with military-grade pulse weapons and intent on disrupting the peace talks. Alarms blared throughout the complex as the attackers stormed the main assembly hall, their leader demanding the immediate cessation of trade agreements with human worlds. Chaos erupted. Diplomats dove for cover behind their reinforced podiums while their armed guards drew weapons and took defensive positions. Plasma bolts and energy beams crisscrossed the chamber in a deadly light show. The attackers, professional soldiers with advanced equipment, systematically began overwhelming the various security forces. That's when the human guards finally moved. Sergeant Martinez vaulted over a fallen debris pile with fluid grace, reaching the first attacker before he could fully turn his weapon toward fleeing diplomats. Her bare hand struck with surgical precision, a knife hand to the throat, an elbow to a nerve cluster, a perfectly timed sweep that sent the militant crashing to the floor, unconscious before he hit the ground. Corporal Johnson moved like liquid mercury, seeming to flow between energy blasts that should have been impossible to dodge. He disarmed 3 attackers in the span of heartbeats, each motion economical and devastatingly effective. A pressure point here, a joint lock there, and armed militants crumpled like discarded clothing. Within 90 seconds, 8 heavily armed insurgents lay unconscious on the chamber floor. The human guard stood over them, breathing only slightly harder than normal, their uniforms barely disheveled. The silence that followed was deafening. Chairman Veltar was the first to speak, his voice filled with newfound respect. "By the stars, what are they?" Ambassador Chen straightened her jacket and looked around the stunned assembly. "They're Marines, Chairman. Human Marines don't need weapons because they are weapons." Later, during the post-incident debriefing, the truth finally emerged. Every human diplomatic guard was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, trained in 17 different forms of combat, qualified in zero-gravity warfare, and capable of neutralizing threats with nothing more than their hands and minds. They carried no weapons because they had been forged into something far more dangerous, thinking, adaptable instruments of controlled violence. The Galactic Council's understanding of humanity shifted that day. They had assumed the absence of weapons indicated weakness. Instead, they discovered it represented confidence born from absolute capability. From that moment forward, human diplomatic missions were granted unprecedented access throughout the galaxy. Not because they were feared, but because they had earned something far more valuable, respect. The guards still carried no weapons. They no longer needed to.